Hello and welcome to another installment of the Philosophy 101 series with me, Mike. And the purpose of this series of videos is to not only give you an introduction to the ideas of philosophy, but also provide you with the tools that you need to actively engage in the act of philosophy. So in the last video, we explored the arguments against the existence of God, focusing on the problem of evil, non-belief, and we also looked at some of the sort of logical inconsistencies in the concept of God. So today we're going to examine the relationship between faith and reason. Can belief in God be justified through reason alone, or does it require a leap of faith? And we'll also explore whether faith and reason can actually coexist, or if they are sort of fundamentally and diametrically opposed. So the agenda for today's video is fairly simple. We are going to first and foremost define faith and reason. And then after that, we're going to look at some of the key perspectives on faith and reason. And we're going to move on from there to think about the balance between faith and reason. And finally, we are going to think about the implications for belief and also skepticism. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's define faith and reason. So what is faith? Faith is often defined as a strong belief or trust in something, particularly when it cannot be proven empirically or scientifically. It's a conviction that extends beyond the scope of what can be sort of directly tested or observed. Faith plays a prominent role in religious contexts where it often signifies belief in God, spiritual truths, or like the supernatural. However, faith is not confined to religion. It can also manifest itself in relationships, personal aspirations, or even like worldviews. So faith often involves confidence in things that can't be sort of tangibly verified. For instance, believing in a higher power, a moral order, or the ultimate goodness of humanity requires trust without material proof. For many, faith is rooted in personal experience. These experiences, whether spiritual, emotional, or intuitive, provide a kind of subjective evidence that strengthens belief. Faith is sometimes viewed as the opposite of doubt, yet the relationship between the two is far more complex. So some argue that faith cannot exist without the presence of doubt, as overcoming uncertainty is a central part of having faith. And this paradox highlights the depth of belief where commitment endures despite incomplete understanding. Faith inspires people to take risks, endure hardships, or act with purpose. It can function as a driving force that propels individuals to strive toward their goals, even in the absence of guarantees. Faith, for those who possess it, represents a way of navigating life's uncertainties. It fills the gaps where reason may falter or evidence is unavailable, offering hope, direction, and meaning. Reason, by contrast, is the capacity to think critically, logically, and systematically. It's the process of evaluating claims, analyzing evidence, and deriving conclusions through careful thought and observation. Reason forms the foundation of science, philosophy, and many aspects of human inquiry because it seeks to uncover truths through justification rather than assumption. The nature of reason can be understood through its key characteristics. So reason provides humans with a method for organizing thoughts and solving problems and uncovering patterns in the world. It enables us to process information and arrive at conclusions based on clear premises. You could say that reason is a tool for understanding and evaluating claims. Reason demands that observable facts, logical coherence, and sound arguments support beliefs and claims. Empirical data, experiments, and critical analysis are essential tools for reasoning. So basically, reason seeks justification through evidence and logic. We often associate reason with skepticism and critical thinking, because reason thrives on skepticism, which involves questioning assumptions and challenging ideas. Skepticism is not about cynicism, but rather a method for filtering out errors and uncovering sort of reliable knowledge. Reason values internal consistency and coherence between ideas. Logical contradictions undermine arguments, while well-structured reasoning builds confidence in conclusions. So think about a belief that you hold. Was it formed through faith, reason, or both? And how do you justify it? I'm not going to give you, obviously, any answer to that because it's about you, right? But I do want you to jump in the comments and answer that. You don't need to go wild and write a 10,000 word dissertation over it, but a short paragraph to just describe that. So think of a belief that you hold and consider whether it was formed through faith, reason, or both. And how do you justify that belief? So pause the video and jump in the comments with that, and then when you come back, we will think about some key perspectives on faith and reason. So, you're back. Brilliant. So now we can start to think about some of the key perspectives on faith and reason. So, Fideism is the philosophical position that faith is independent of and often superior to reason to understand truth, particularly in religious or existential matters. According to Fideists, human reason has limits when grappling with the divine, the infinite, or ultimate meaning. Fideism emphasizes the primacy of faith, arguing that some truths, especially those concerning God or the nature of existence, can only be accessed through belief and not through rational analysis. This approach contrasts with rationalism, which grounds religious belief in logical arguments and evidence. For Fideists, attempting to use reason to justify faith undermines its essence, as faith involves a kind of trust that transcends rational justification. Soren Kierkegaard, often considered the father of existentialism, was a central proponent of Fideism. He argued that faith requires a leap beyond what reason can affirm, a passionate commitment to belief in the face of uncertainty. Kierkegaard's approach highlights faith as deeply personal and existential, tied to individual experience rather than objective universal proof. Kierkegaard believed that faith cannot be fully justified or understood through logical analysis. Instead, it involves an existential decision to believe despite the absence of evidence. For example, belief in God is not about intellectual arguments, but about how one relates to God on a personal and transformative level. Faith requires an act of personal courage and commitment, and this act is inherently risky because it lacks rational guarantees. To have faith is to embrace uncertainty and place trust in something that cannot be proven, an act Kierkegaard describes as a leap, or more specifically, a leap of faith. Kierkegaard saw doubt as integral to the experience of faith. Far from being its opposite, doubt challenges individuals to choose faith deliberately. Faith becomes meaningful precisely because it exists alongside doubt, requiring individuals to overcome uncertainty and fear. Faith involves both personal commitment and risk. Kierkegaard's ideas are particularly evident in his analysis of the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. In Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard portrays Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac as the ultimate act of faith, a decision that defied ethical and rational norms. Abraham's faith required him to act on his trust in God, even though his actions seemed incomprehensible from a moral or logical perspective. This illustrates that faith, for Kierkegaard, operates in a realm beyond reason, requiring total submission to a higher subjective truth. So, do you agree that faith is most meaningful when it transcends reason? Why or why not? That's something I want you to think about and write a couple of paragraphs about in the comments. I'll obviously pause the video to do that. If necessary, go back over that the last sort of few minutes of this discussion to refresh all of that. But it is an important question, and the act of thinking about it and figuring it out and answering it for yourself will tell you a lot about yourself. So that question again is, do you agree that faith is most meaningful when it transcends reason? Why or why not? So pause the video and go and do that. And you're back again. Excellent. Well, I very much look forward to reading your response about whether faith is more meaningful when it transcends reason. It's something that I find is quite eye-opening, because a lot of the time it's hard to really put our thoughts and feelings into context until we sort of get them down on paper, and then we can see it in black and white in some way that is sort of, in a way, kind of separate from us, so we can view it from a more of an outside perspective and hopefully refine our perspective. So that's why we do these activities. So let's now think about natural theology. So natural theology is the branch of theology that seeks to justify religious belief through reason, logic, and empirical evidence, without actually relying on divine revelation. It's an attempt to understand God and spiritual truths through observation of the natural world and the use of human reason. Prominent philosophers and theologians such as Thomas Aquinas and William Paley developed arguments to demonstrate the existence of God and provide a rational foundation for faith. Natural theology holds that faith and reason are not adversaries, but complementary tools that together can guide individuals toward truth. Natural theology argues that human reason, when applied to the natural world, can reveal like signs of a creator. The complexity, order, and causality of the universe provides a rational basis for belief in God. Arguments like the cosmological and teleological arguments are really quite central and prominent examples of this approach. While natural theology seeks to demonstrate God's existence and attributes through reason, it acknowledges that faith ultimately transcends reason. Reason provides a foundation, a starting point that faith builds upon. For instance, reason might lead someone to conclude that a designer or cause must exist, but faith leads them to trust in the personal and moral nature of that cause. Natural theologians often refer to the natural world as a book of nature, which, like sacred texts, reveals truths about its creators. By studying the universe, its laws, beauty, and complexity, humans can infer aspects of God's nature such as omnipotence, intelligence, and order. So let's think about some of the key arguments in natural theology, and this is going to be a really quick look at these, because we've actually discussed these a couple of videos ago in greater depth. So but yeah, so the cosmological argument by Thomas Aquinas is based on the principle of causality. Aquinas' 5 ways outlines the sort of logical paths to infer the existence of God as the ultimate cause of the universe. So that argument in its sort of simplest form is that everything that exists must have a cause. There cannot be an infinite regress of causes, therefore there must be a first uncaused cause, which is God. Aquinas argued that reason can demonstrate the necessity of a prime mover, or that first uncaused cause, or a necessary being who brought the contingent world into existence. The teleological argument, most famously articulated by William Paley, and is also known as the argument from design, asserts that the order and complexity of the natural world point to an intelligent designer. So William Paley famously used the watchmaker analogy to illustrate this point. So if you were walking on a beach and you found a watch on the ground, it's intricate. Just as a quick aside, when we say watch, obviously we think like wristwatch and so on and so forth, but at the time, think more like pocket watches and that sort of thing. Not that it matters all that much, but just some context. Anyway, so you're walking on the beach and you find this watch, and you have a good look at it. So you see that it has an intricate design, and that its design would imply that it had a designer, someone that made it, or in this case, a watchmaker. Similarly, the complexity of natural systems like ecosystems or the laws of physics or whatever suggests a powerful designer. And this designer is understood to be God. Modern forms of the teleological argument appeal to the fine-tuning of the universe, where the precise conditions for life appear improbably well calibrated, leading many to infer design over chance. And we also have the moral argument. So this argument suggests that the existence of objective moral values implies a moral lawgiver. If concepts of good and evil are universal, then they must be grounded in something beyond human opinion, such as the nature of God. So natural theology does not replace faith, but strengthens it by providing rational support for belief. By demonstrating that belief in God is not irrational, natural theology helps to bridge the gap between reason and faith. For many, these arguments serve as a foundation upon which faith can grow, offering intellectual assurance that belief in God is consistent with logic and evidence. Reason provides a framework for understanding, but it cannot capture the fullness of religious experience. Faith goes beyond what reason alone can prove, embracing trust, personal transformation, and existential meaning. So I guess we could articulate that as reason as a servant of faith. Natural theology does not aim to force belief, but instead aims to show that belief in God is intellectually credible. For individuals struggling with doubt, rational arguments can offer reassurance that faith is not blind or naive. And I guess we could sort of articulate this more succinctly as something like faith supported, not coerced. So do the arguments for God's existence, like the cosmological argument and so on, do they strengthen your understanding of faith, or do they feel unnecessary? And to have a think about that. So this question highlights the role of reason in religious belief and invites reflection on whether logical arguments enhance or diminish faith. So for some, these arguments may strengthen faith. So arguments like cosmological or teleological arguments can provide a sense of intellectual stability. They affirm that faith is not merely emotional, but has a rational foundation. For example, a scientist or philosopher may find greater confidence in their faith, knowing that the fine-tuning of the universe or the logical necessity of a first cause points towards a creator. For others, these arguments feel unnecessary. Some people experience faith as deeply personal and intuitive, requiring no logical justification. To them, religious belief is about trust, relationships, and existential meaning rather than sort of rational proof. The leap of faith that's described by Kierkegaard reflects this view, where faith is most meaningful precisely because it transcends reason. And there is a middle ground. There's always a middle ground. So many individuals see faith and reason as complementary. While faith involves personal commitment, reason can help clarify and deepen that commitment. Rational arguments may not create faith, but they can remove intellectual obstacles, making belief more accessible. So now is a good place, or a good point, I think, to start thinking about rational skepticism. So rational skepticism is the philosophical stance that beliefs, including religious faith, must be justified through evidence and reasoning. Thinkers like David Hume and Bertrand Russell challenged the compatibility of faith with reason, arguing that belief without sufficient evidence is irrational. From this perspective, faith is seen as an unjustified leap that fails to meet the standards of critical thinking. So there are some key principles that we need to sort of get our heads around with rational skepticism. So faith without evidence is unjustified, reason demands critical examination, and the conflict between faith and reason. So we'll start with faith without evidence is unjustified. Rational skeptics argue that accepting beliefs without empirical or logical justification is intellectually irresponsible. Hume famously critiqued miracles, asserting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And just as a quick aside, I love that phrase, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It is so beautiful and wonderful. It's just brilliant. But that's kind of beside the point. That's me being a writer getting excited by words. So sorry about that. So the next sort of principle of rational skepticism is reason demands critical examination. So rational skepticism emphasizes questioning all beliefs to avoid error or self-deception. For skeptics, religious faith often falls short because it relies on subjective experience or authority rather than like any form of objective proof. And the sort of final key principle that we need to wrap our heads around is the conflict between faith and reason. So Bertrand Russell argued that belief in God or religious doctrines often lacks the logical foundation required for rational acceptance. To him, holding such beliefs without evidence undermines reason's role as a guide to truth. So the rational skeptics, they contend that faith and reason operate on conflicting principles. While faith often involves trust in the unseen, reason demands verifiable justification. Faith, in their view, risks leading to dogmatism because it bypasses critical scrutiny. However, skepticism does not necessarily render faith meaningless. Instead, it challenges believers to confront questions like, is faith valuable even if it cannot be rationally justified? So for some, this tension deepens faith by making it a conscious, reflective choice rather than passive acceptance. So I have an activity for you to do at this point, something I want you to think about and write a little about, and obviously post it in the comments. And really it's a question. So if faith cannot be justified through reason, does that make it less meaningful or valuable, and why? And this is one of those questions where there are no right or wrong answers. There is only your perspective. So I am very much interested in understanding your perspective. But it's also good to articulate that perspective for you to fully grasp exactly what that is and what that means for you. So that question again is, if faith cannot be justified through reason, does it make it less meaningful or valuable, and why? So pause the video, and then when you come back, we will move on. So you're back. Fantastic. So let's now think about the balance between faith and reason. So the what's the word? The interplay between faith and reason has long been a topic of philosophical and theological reflection. Rather than seeing them as opposing forces, many thinkers argue that faith and reason work together, each contributing to a fuller understanding of truth. For example, John Paul II wrote, "Faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth." Now that is quite a beautiful quote, if you ask me. Not that anyone did, but nonetheless. But yeah, anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a sidetrack there. So, as I said, John Paul II, to be more precise, wrote, "Faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth." So reason helps us grasp and analyze the world around us, while faith inspires us to see beyond what reason alone can comprehend. So faith and reason can work together in this view. So reason helps, or more to the point, are working together in this view. So reason helps to clarify and support faith, and faith provides meaning and purpose beyond the limits of reason. So think of a situation where both faith and reason played a role in your decision making. How did they interact? So when you think about this, you might consider examples such as facing a medical diagnosis. So reason helps assess the treatment options, while faith offers sort of emotional strength and hope. We also see examples in ethical dilemmas. So reason helps us weigh moral principles and consequences, while faith may guide the deeper values underlying the decision. And we also see examples of this in like career and life choices. So we use reason to analyze the risks and the benefits, while faith fosters trust in your own sort of purpose or potential outcomes. So reason helps us to understand the world, its patterns, its causes and possibilities, whereas faith complements this by giving us resilience in the face of adversity, hope in difficult circumstances, and a sense of purpose that reason alone might not provide. So what I want you to do is reflect on a personal challenge or ethical dilemma where faith and reason might work together. And I want you to write a short example illustrating this interaction. For instance, you might describe how they are balanced, how you balance rational planning with faith in a positive outcome when deciding to take a major risk, such as moving to a new city, a new country, whatever, or pursuing a challenging goal. So jump in the comments with your responses to that. So reflect on a personal challenge or ethical dilemma where faith and reason might work together, and then write a short example of this interaction, illustrating this interaction. So jump in the comments with that. I very much look forward to reading those. It is always fascinating to listen to people's responses to that one. So did you pause the video and do that? I certainly hope so, because we're about to move on. So let's think about some of the implications for belief and skepticism. So we'll start with looking at it for believers. So faith and reason can play complementary roles in deepening and solidifying a believer's perspective. For believers, reconciling faith and reason can strengthen their worldview. Some may see faith as a rational choice supported by evidence from philosophy, science, or personal experience. Others may view faith as a deeper commitment, one that transcends evidence and reflects trust in something greater than themselves. This approach allows believers to engage critically with their faith while maintaining a sense of spiritual conviction. For skeptics, reason often leads to the sort of questioning or rejection of religious claims that lack any sort of empirical support. However, an open exploration of faith's role in human experience can provide a more nuanced perspective. For skeptics, reason alone may lead to doubt about religious claims. However, understanding the role of faith, its ability to its ability to offer hope, is what I was trying to say there, and purpose and resilience and all that good stuff, can help skeptics to appreciate why belief holds meaning for others, even if they don't actually share it themselves. And this understanding fosters dialogue and mutual respect between these differing viewpoints. So do you think faith and reason can coexist peacefully, or are they always in tension? And why? So do you think faith and reason can coexist peacefully, or are they always in tension? And why? So think about scenarios where faith and reason might align, i.e. using reason to defend moral principles grounded in faith, versus situations where they might conflict, like when faith demands belief in something contrary to empirical evidence. So I really want you to think about that. And if you are lucky enough to be, watching this with a person, pause the video and talk about it. Discussion really does do wonders when we are trying to process ideas. But really the purpose of this, and if you haven't got someone to discuss it with, then just write something and post it in the comments. But the purpose of this discussion is to help you explore how, as individuals, we navigate the complexities of belief, doubt, and understanding, emphasizing the what's the word I'm looking for? The diverse ways faith and reason interact in human thought. So pause the video and have that discussion. Post your sort of the results of that discussion in the comments. That would be fantastic. So that question again is, do you think faith and reason can coexist peacefully, or are they always in tension, and why? So post your responses to that in the comments. If you can get a discussion going, then absolutely do so, because it is that act of discussion is a foundational sort of principle of the act of philosophy. So if you can get it going, then go for it. If not, then just write something that fully articulates and expresses your point of view on this subject. So the relationship between faith and reason is complex. For some, faith transcends reason, offering meaning that logic just can't. For others, reason is the foundation of belief, providing justification and coherence. And both of these approaches challenge us to think deeply about what we believe and why. So before we part ways, I do have one final activity for you, and that is to write a short paragraph answering this question. Do you think faith needs reason to be meaningful, or is it valuable on its own, and why? So that question again is, do you think faith needs reason to be meaningful, or is it valuable on its own? So post that your response to that in the comments. You know, the thoughts processes that will go into you coming up with your answer will help to solidify everything that we have gone through in this video, and indeed the last sort of couple of videos. So it's really important that you do that. But yeah, that is it for this video. So in the next video, we're going to examine the concept of religious experience. So can personal encounters with the divine provide evidence for God's experience? And I very much look forward to seeing you there. It's a really interesting one, so I look forward to seeing you there. And before I go, as always, I'd like to ask you to do the YouTube things, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. As I always say, as much as it helps me out, which is fantastic and I really appreciate it, the most important reason why you should do that, or the greatest sort of motivational factor as to why you should do that, i.e. like the video and subscribe to the channel, is because it lets YouTube know that you're interested in hearing more about these subjects. You're not just interested in me, you're interested in the subject. Therefore, YouTube's algorithm, which is wonderfully complex, but it really is fantastic. YouTube's algorithm will then start putting content in front of you from other creators and so on that are talking about these same subjects, which will enable you to broaden your perspective, not be too sort of pinned down by any one particular interpretation, and more importantly, it will enable you to think critically about the subjects at hand and then actually come to your own conclusions in a meaningful and reasonable way. So that's the benefit of liking the video and subscribing to the channel and all that stuff. But there's no drama if you don't want to do that. That's totally fine too. So as I said a moment ago, the next video is going to be an examination of religious experience. So I look forward to seeing you on that one. It really is a fascinating subject. So I hope to see you there. And thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you on that next one. Goodbye.